to Hope Church. How's everyone doing? Everybody having a good day? If we haven't met before, I'm Dan Thomas, executive pastor here. And whether you're in the room or you're online, we are so glad you're here today. This has been an exciting series. This is the last week of House of Hope. We've been talking about how every generation matters. And, our mission here at Hope Church is to do whatever it takes for all people to follow, grow, and live with Jesus. And all people includes all generations. And so last week, Kay did a fantastic job. She talked about how the fact that we want to have every generation reaching back to help the next generation. And so we're going to continue that theme today. If you missed any of the message of this series, I encourage you to go online and watch because they really are good. They really will help change your life and form your life that way. Well, raise your hand if you're a football fan. I'm talking American football here. Any Rams, LA Rams fans in the room or online, any LA Rams, this is your chance to shout it out. Shout out? Oh, yeah. Yeah. Okay, we got one. All right, well, if you're a Matthew Stratford fan, you might be able to shout it as well. But you guys did a great job. 22 years in the waiting. Any Who Day fans in the room? Any Bengals fans? I'm so sorry for you. You don't want to admit it. That's okay. You'll be back. You'll be back as far as that goes. Well, I didn't play football growing up. Didn't play organized sports growing up. I was always too small. My parents wanted to protect my valuable brain. But I played a lot of backyard ball. I really did. And I really love watching football. I really do. If you didn't know, I'm from Wisconsin, and so I'm a Green Bay Packer fan. If you were here at our kickoff day about 3 weeks ago, you saw with my cheese head. And, it's amazing. It's my birthright to be a Packer fan. It's my birthright. In fact, I was reading the NFL rules. It says this. It says, you're not allowed to change your allegiance from the team of your childhood. When you pick a team, it's like a spouse. Till death do us part. So there you have it. I'm a Packer fan for life. Well, if you're not big into football, you'll probably still know that every football game, like a lot of team sports, has two halves. And every half is broken into 2 quarters. So there's 4 quarters in the game. So I want to take a moment and just kind of talk about life and talk about our generations and kind of how our lives match a 4 quarters football game. So the first quarter is birth and through your 20s, birth up until about 30. If you want to hit your adult quarter, it's roughly from high school up through your 20s. All right? And lots of things are happening in your first quarter. Lots of new things, first things. All right? Schooling plays a big part of what's happening during your first quarter life, right? And there's lots of first things. There's the first romance. There's the first job. There's the first apartment and the second apartment and the third apartment and the fourth apartment. There might be the first house. There might be first kids. Lots and lots and lots and lots of firsts. If you're in that stage, it's lots of learning, lots of stuff happening that way. And if you're in that stage, I'd love just to give a shout out. Who here is between birth and in your 20s? Who is that? Shout out. Give a holler. That was a very anemic holler, but we're going to go with that, okay? We're going to go with that. I was expecting a little more energy, but that's okay. That's okay. So first quarter, if you're in the first quarter, you haven't met yet, we have Joshua as our youth and young adult director here, brand new here. You need to make sure you meet him. Well, second quarter runs roughly 30 to 45 years old, second quarter life. And the second quarter life, it's really a chance of settling in. Parenting is a big part of the second quarter, right? And in your jobs, your careers, you're kind of figuring out what you want to do for a living. You've kind of learned a lot during the first quarter. Now you're applying that second quarter, and you start realizing the impact you actually can have in so many areas of your life. So who here is in the second quarter between 30 and 45? Let's shout out. All right, see, much more healthy that way. That's good. All right. Third quarter, 45 to 60. 45 to 60, third quarter. This is the empty nester stage. This is when the kids eventually leave the home. I say eventually. That's kind of a yo-yo. They go out, in, out, in. But eventually they're gone during this stage, and you're at the highest level you'll ever be in your career. This is kind of the peak moment, that peak season for your career. And you're actually started to accumulate all that stuff. You ever notice that? The older you get, the more you start enjoying the fruits of your labor. This is when you have the cars and the camper and the boat and all those other things start adding up. You know you've reached this quarter whenever you move. You start realizing how many trucks you actually do need to move your home. It's a little bit ridiculous how much stuff you've collected. So if you're between 45 and 60, let's hear from you. Woo! All right, now notice I got my hand up. Okay, I got 3.5 months left till I hit the big 6-0. So I'm still in my third quarter, and I'm riding with that. I tell people that I was a child in the 60s, I was a youth in the 70s, and I was a young adult in the 80s. I got a picture I want to show you here. It's kind of fun of me. This shows the eras of my life. A couple of things you'll notice. First of all, you'll notice that the hair. You'll notice the hair. Is that amazing or what? And that was high school was my brown phase. That was my brown phase. And then look at that. Look at that car. That car's sweeter. 85 Firebird, T-top, brand new, 354 barrel. I went through my first set of tires in the first year. It was an amazing vehicle. I sold that thing when I crossed over from the first quarter to the second quarter because putting 2 car seats in the back of that thing was an absolute pain in the backside. But anyway, it was a fantastic car. I wish I still had it. I really do. It was a great car. Well, let's talk about fourth quarter. 60 plus years old. Lots of things are changing there. Retirement has happened at some point during this quarter. I don't know when exactly, but at some point you crossed over into retirement. You got a little more time in your hand, a little more flexible. If you have grandkids, they become a priority for you at this stage. And you're really starting to think about, what does my ultimate future look like? You're really starting to think differently about the way things are going that way. So if you're over 60, let me hear from you. Let me hear from you if you're over 60. I'm just saying. Now, don't you wish I would go back and ask the first quarter people to shout out? I'm not going to give you that chance, but I'm just saying. All right. So we've spent a lot of time talking about the first half so far this series. And so I'm going to talk to you about the second half. And I'm very thankful, Pastor Tad, I'm honored he asked me to talk today. He said he was looking for someone with some gray hair that could talk about the second half. And for some reason, he glanced right at me. I don't understand that, but it's an opportunity that way. So thank you, Pastor Tad. We're talking about the second quarter. And here's the deal. But if you're in the first half, don't check out. Don't check out. Because here's my big idea this morning. The church only works if every generation is working together. The church only works if every generation is working together. In fact, I'm going to go further and say life. Life only works if every generation is working together. That's my big idea for today. So, and when you think about that, every generation and everything matters. Think about it back to the football game. Every minute of every quarter matters. It really does. In fact, the great Packer coach, Vince Lombardi, I know you all know him. He had some great quotes. And one of the things he said is when he coached the Packers, they never lost. They never lost the entire time he coached the Packers. They just occasionally ran out of time. All right? Every minute counts of the game, all right? Well, I talked about a football game, 4 quarters. I'm going to talk about some scripture. And in scripture, it talks about 3 levels of maturity in life. And I'm going to talk from 1 John 2. Now, if you're in your Bible, it's verses 13 and 14. And I want to confess right now, if you're following along, that I've rearranged the sentences. I have not messed with the Word of God. I've not added things or taken things away. I've just rearranged some sentences to kind of help understand the flow a little bit, okay? So it says here in the very first beginning, it says, I have written to you children because you know the Father. It talks about children. It's talking about immaturity. And it's talking about those in the first quarter of life. Now, don't get offended if you're in the first quarter. I just called you immature. No. It's a spiritual perspective. We heard statistics. Most people have accepted Jesus at some point in their first quarter. And so you are immature in your faith. You're learning. You're growing. And what you're learning is you need to learn to know the Father. Remember what Kay said last week? She said, we start at a very young age here, want to communicate to kids. They know that God loves them, that God made them, and they can trust God no matter what. And that applies to them, and it applies to all of us. But in the first quarter, it's so critical because there's so much change happening. We need to know we can trust God no matter what. All right, it goes on to say, the next verse says, I have written to you, young men, because you're strong and the word of God remains in you. Young men, I think, is referring to both men and women in the second quarter of life. You're strong. You're physically strong. You're mentally strong. You're intellectually strong. You're spiritually strong. You're spiritually strong because you've been experiencing God. You experienced him in your first quarter, and now you're settling in, and you're really experiencing the second quarter. You're pressing into him. You're knowing him like never before. You're learning to trust him to experience him. And then finally it says, fathers. Fathers, I'm writing to you because you know him who you've been with from the beginning. When it says fathers, just like young men, I think it's referring to men and women in the second half of life. Because you've experienced him in the first half of your life, and now you're pressing in. Now you're learning to rest in him. I always think of John 15, where it says, Jesus is the vine, and we are the branches. Whoever abides in him, and he abides in us, and we will bear much fruit. And that's what's happening in our second half of our lives. Well, if you know, again, in about football, between the first half and the second half, there's a space. It's called halftime. In an NFL game, it's 10 minutes. And that space between the first and second halves of our lives is so vital, so vital. In fact, about 15 years ago, Bob Buford wrote a book called Halftime. It's a great book. And he talks about a football game. He talks about this space between and the decisions that have to be made in that pause between our two halves of life. He says this. He says, in the first half of life, we're primarily focused on ourselves, on achieving and gaining and learning and earning and teaching. We're incredibly busy. We're incredibly busy creating our homes, raising our kids, and building our careers, and ultimately just trying to achieve what we define as success in our personal, professional lives. Man, that sums it up for me. When I talk to someone in their 20s and 30s and 40s that's busy, I'm busy, busy, busy. There's so much you need to do, and there's so much you want to do. You're busy all the time. Well, when you get to the second half, things kind of slow down just a little bit. They slow down because that's just the reality of life. But he says this, he says, while the second half might be slower, it's also riskier. Because it has to do with living beyond the immediate. We have the opportunity, he says. It says here, in the second half, we have the choice to continue to be focused on ourselves or shift our focus onto others. Man, that's such an opportunity we've got. And the key word is opportunity. He goes on to say, we have the opportunity to water, cultivate, and release the seed of creativity and energy that was planted within us during the first half of our lives, so we may be abundantly fruitful. We have that opportunity. We have a choice what we're going to do. And what makes the difference of what path we choose? Halftime. Halftime. That pause between the first and second half. One football coach says this, making effective adjustments at halftime to what's happening in the game up to that point is one of the most difficult things in coaching football, but it's also critically important. So I want to give you 3 things to think about when it comes to this thing idea called halftime. First thing to think about. A good first half doesn't mean you'll automatically have a good second half. A good first half doesn't mean you'll automatically have a good second half. Anybody remember Super Bowl LI? For those non-Romans out there, Super Bowl 51, 2017. Any Atlanta Falcons fans in the room? If you're an Atlanta Falcons fan, you remember that game. You wish you could forget it, but you can't. They were up over the New England Patriots 28-3 at halftime. 28-3. A reporter said at halftime in the Falcon locker room was spent celebrating the victory celebration. They were already starting the victory celebration. Then they played the second half. Ouch. They lost 34-28 in overtime to those Patriots. And said it goes down as one of the greatest collapses in football history. One reporter wrote the next day, I love this. He says, if there's a Falcons fan in your life, please give them a hug today because their team's loss was a sucker punch to their football soul. I love that. Here's the point. You may have had a very successful first half. You may have. And you worked hard for that. You worked hard. And you've been enjoying some of the fruits of that labor. And it's tempting around halftime to kick back and celebrate just a little bit. Take a break. Celebrate a little bit more. Take a little longer break. But you got to be careful. Because if you're not careful, you'll start your celebration too soon. Instead, think about what could your life be? What type of impact could you really have if you could shift gears? In fact, if you kick another gear and get back into the game and finish the game, because the game is not over yet. The game is not over yet for you. And so many people at halftime kick back and just take it easy the second half of life. And the scripture says clearly opposite of that. Look at Timothy, or look what Paul says to Timothy in 1 Timothy. This command I entrust to you, Timothy, my son, in accordance with the prophecies previously made concerning you, that by them you'll fight the good fight, keep the faith, in good conscience, which some have rejected and suffered shipwreck in regards to their faith. They started out strong in that first half, but then suffered shipwreck in the second half of life. Got to be careful. Number 2, a bad first half doesn't necessarily mean you'll automatically have a bad second half. Man, where are the Bengals fans out there again? Was anybody going to admit it this time? Still no Bengals fans. It's just sad. Okay. Well, if you're a Bengals fan, they didn't do too well in the Super Bowl, but they did fantastic in the championship game, which was about a month ago today against the Kansas City Chiefs. At halftime, the Bengals were down 10-21. And ESPN gave the Bengals an 8% chance of winning the game. So what did they do at halftime? They came up with a plan. And they executed the plan, and they won the game against the Chiefs. It was an amazing turnaround. Now again, also too, just like they didn't actually lose the Super Bowl. They just ran out of time. Just saying. Different way to look at things. How many out there have had a bad first half? Or if not bad, routine, unremarkable? How many of you think that what would happen if you were to reflect in that first half and say, what do I want that second half to be? Remember what Buford says, I put up here on the screen here, a little slower. It says, you have a choice to continue to be focused on ourselves or water, cultivate, and release the seed of creativity and energy that's been planted within you during the first half so that we may be abundantly fruitful. We have an opportunity. My dad's big into family history. He's big into family history. He got the bug for that because my grandfather did not know his father, did not know his biological father. His biological father died before my grandfather was born. And when my dad was growing up, he asked my grandfather about his family. He didn't know anything about it. And so my dad did some research. And through research, he uncovered my great-great-grandfather, Ebenezer. This is Ebenezer here, my great-great-grandfather, and his wife, Isabel. They grew up, and we don't have a lot of information about Ebenezer in the first half of his life, but we do have a unique notation in the family Bible. Maybe she's holding it. We actually don't have it. We have the notation. The notation said, Charter Deacon, Lamar's, Iowa, First Baptist Church. And so I did some Google search. I wanted to know if the First Baptist Church was still there in Lamar's, Iowa, and it is. Well, I got to thinking, I wonder if it's still the First Baptist Church. You know how they kind of reuse that name again? So I wanted to see if it was the same one. And so I looked up their website, and they have the records of their bicentennial in 1940. The church was founded in 1890. And they have a summary of that first charter meeting. It says this. It says, when the evening came to organize the church, there were just 6 persons present besides Reverend Carroll. The outlook did not look very encouraging. And Reverend Carroll and the other people present hesitated over the advisability of trying to organize a church with so few in numbers. When one of the sisters arose, and she said this, when the children of Israel passed over the Jordan, the feet of the priests that bore the ark touched the water before the waters parted for them to cross over. Again, think back to your Bible history. This is when Joshua is leading the Israelites into the promised land. He said the priests are going to go first. They stepped in the Jordan River, and the Jordan River, once they put their foot down, parted. She says this, so if we, like them, take this step, it should be by faith and not by sight, trusting God to open the way. After further deliberation and prayer, it was decided to go ahead and organize. And then it lists the 6 people that were present. 6 people. Mr. Ebenezer R. Thomas was elected the deacon and trustee. The minutes also included only one personal notation from my great-great-grandfather. It says, Mr. Thomas was favorably known here. If 130 years from now, my great-grandchildren find out that I was at Hope Church, if there's one thing I hope they learn, is that I was favorably known here. I'd take that. Why am I telling this story? Well, as I said, we don't know a lot about the first half of his life, but we know he moved to Lamar's, Iowa, when he was 71 years old. 1 year prior to the founding of this church, he was 72 years old when he attended that meeting. He was 72 years old in this fourth quarter when he decided to cultivate the seed that was in him and plant a seed in Lamar's, Iowa. And that church is still here today. How many lives do you think were changed because 130 years ago, those 6 people gathered together and planted some seeds in their second half of life? That's the type of impact we can have in our second half. Our last point. The best game would be to combine the fresh legs of the first half with the learnings of the second half. Boy, if you could put those two together in a game, it'd be the best game ever, right? When I worked in manufacturing, one of my first assignments was to oversee the welding department. Welding is basically the joining together of 2 metals, and you can do it lots of different ways. And a really cool way to do that is a thing called orbital welding. You basically take a piece of metal and you spin it really fast. And then you press it up against another piece of metal and you let the friction of that contact get hot. And it gets smoky and then it gets red hot and it forms a bond that's actually one of the most effective welds you can actually have. It kind of reminds me of the people in the first and second halves of life, right? If we can get them to come together, there's some friction. Why is there friction when we get different generations together? Because guess what? People are unique, aren't they? Different generations think differently, and sometimes there's some heat when those generations come together. Can you get an amen to that, right? But man, if we can hold out for that heat, we can form an incredible bond together. So how do we get that to happen? Well, as an organized church, we do some things to try to encourage that. One of the things, and Kate taught this last week, in our Hope Kids and our Student Hope, we really try to emphasize having one generation reach back to the next generation. It's an opportunity for people to step into that. We also design our grow groups. I mean, to me, the best grow group is a multi-generational grow group. But perhaps the best question, the way to word that question is better, what can you do to connect up with another generation? See, the church can give you opportunities. We can't make anybody do anything. You have to want to step in to that opportunity. That's the choice you have. And I often hear, I've heard this said, and this is sad. I've heard young people say, well, I've tried to reach older people, but they won't give me the time of day. They won't give me time and attention. They don't care much about me. And I've talked to some older people, and they said, well, I'd love to reach out. They don't want my input. And sadly, that actually might be a true experience you've had. And I'm sorry that you had that experience. That was not nice. But here's the deal. One of the biggest challenges we have whenever we're talking about diversity is that they won't come to me. They won't come to me. What would happen if we flipped that script and we went to them? And unfortunately, one rejection seals your fate for the rest of your life. It doesn't have to be that way. What happens when rejected? We try again. We try again. We try again. Why? Because we have to believe that we need each other, that we are better together. If we believe that, if we bleed that, then we will overcome those barriers and we will work to come together. Let me go back to that friction weld. I told you one half's moving, the other piece is stationary to come up together. You know how to improve, and we often think about that when we think about the first and second half of lives, because the first half have all the energy, right? The second half, we're just sitting there waiting for them to come to us. You know what makes a better weld? And this is a fact. We get both pieces moving. If both pieces are moving, they come together, that weld actually becomes stronger yet. Stronger yet. You know, I think about 1 Corinthians 9. As Paul is saying, it says, do you not know that those who run the race all run, but only one receives the prize? Run in such a way that you may win. If you're in the first half of life, run to receive the prize. If you're in the second half of life, keep running to receive the prize. Now, in a football game, it ends for the final 2 minutes. If you're a football fan, you know that final 2 minutes can go on a long while. With a good clock management, you can make that thing last a long time. And a lot of points can be scored in the fourth quarter. In fact, a lot of games are won in the final 2 minutes of the game. Well, I'd like to introduce you to someone that's been doing this church thing for a long time. Jim Cook is in the final 2 minutes of his life, and he is scoring a lot of points for the kingdom. And I wanted him to come out here, give him applause. Hey, Jim. Good to see you. Come on over here. I'll make you sit down here. I'm going to turn your mic on here. You good? No? You got to be red here. There you go. Now I got to be red, okay. Now, come over this side. Sit over this far side here. I saved you a seat. Nice today. Yeah, thank you. So, Jim, how old are you?
I dressed up for you.
You did dress up for me. I like that. How old are you?
39.
39.
39 and...
39 and just a few years.
Well, I'll be 86 in May.
86 in May.
86 in May.
Good for you. That's worthy of applause. And you're married, right?
Yeah, my wife said 1 year and 16 days and 14 minutes and 20 seconds older than I am. How about that?
Wow. And you just said that publicly.
I did, didn't I?
Because I was going to ask you how long you've been married.
60 years. Well, no, 62 years.
62 years.
Yeah.
All right. That's
same.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. Did you marry up?
Oh, boy, did I married the princess. I tell you, I married the princess.
You know, I met your wife, and I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that. How many children do you have?
I have 10 of 10. I got 4 boys,
okay.
Ages 48 to 58. Okay. And how can that be? I'm only 39.
That's ridiculous.
I don't understand that.
That's weird. How many grandkids do you have?
4 boys that got 10 blood grandkids. And there are 2 couples that we know very well who have 2 children. They've adopted us as grandparents.
Wow.
Our parents. And so we have 4 adopted grandchildren, too. So we got 14.
That's fantastic. Well, I'd ask you their ages, but I'm not going to do that because that would make your brain hurt. So I'm going to ask you.
2 more.
2 more.
2 more great-grandchildren.
Wow.
Yep.
I did not realize that. Well, congratulations. That's
my
awesome.
quiver was full.
That is amazing. Well, so tell me, how long have you been part of Hope Church?
If I'm not mistaken, we came to Brookwood first. Easter Sunday in 1995. It might have been the Sunday after, but we were just dissatisfied where we were, and we were hungry for spiritual growth. and we just weren't getting it, so we came here in 1995. Been a long time. Been a good ride.
Had been a very good run. You know, as soon as you just said you were hungry for spiritual growth, and when I asked you way back, I asked you as far as what you would say to this people in the second half, you said that they got to really think young.
That's right.
You said avoid the web of laziness. And one of the things you told me, you said, you wrote down some things, but how do you keep yourself going when it comes to relationship with Jesus? What do you do to actively engage spiritually?
Okay, I've grown through the years. I've not always done it perfectly, for sure. But I have my Bible reading every day, and I have my quiet time, my time with God, my prayer time with God. I look forward to reading the Bible. It's like I read the scriptures, and God has spoken through the prophets and whoever he's writing to, but it's like God speaking to me. I don't hear God's voice audibly, but I certainly hear his voice in my spirit. And I thought, oh, man, that's good. Thank you, God. What does this mean? Bless me as I read and help me to understand what I'm reading and how it applies to me. And I have my prayer time. I think I mentioned I've got a prayer list. And I don't like prayer lists as such, but I've got a prayer list. And I read through my prayer list as I feel God leads me to pray for each person. And sometimes there are people and grandsons also that I feel they need to hear from me today. So I text them. I just stop praying, use my prayer list, and I locked into that, and I pray for them. And I text them and say, I'm thinking about you today. I want God to bless you, and I just want you to know how much I love you.
Man, that's awesome. I love your intentionality. You know, one of the things you told me you do a lot of, and you talk about planning, and I'm a planner as well. And you talk about having a plan. You also talk about meeting with people a lot. And a lot of things you do, you involve people. Just roughly, how many people do you meet with on a weekly or basis? Oh, man.
You mean intimately or just?
Yeah, intimately.
Well, first of all, my wife.
Yep, that's good. That's good to meet every day. You should. That's a good thing to do.
Then my 4 boys, we fellowship together. We have our annual Cook Boys outing.
Yep.
We went backpacking and canoeing and hiking and whatever else we do, and had a great time. Now the grandsons have joined us.
That's awesome.
So they are a part of our group too. Then I've got some guys that I meet with on Saturday. We've been meeting for I don't know how many years it's been. It might have been 8, 9 years or so. And it started out, there was a guy here at Brookwood, at Hope, who we went to a meeting in Charlotte, a guys meeting, men's meeting. And the guy was really good. Joe White, he was a coach. And my buddy said to me afterwards, he said, he's crying. He said, I'm tired of playing church. I said, well, why don't you and I meet together? Let's talk about that. And we've been meeting together all this time. Some guys have joined us. Some guys have left and gone out of town, other places. But we do that every Saturday at 7 o'clock.
That's amazing. At
Biscuitville, and then when COVID came along, we had to go to somebody's garage or a park somewhere or somebody's back porch or deck, and still distance too. And then once this COVID is over, we're meeting in a guy's den.
That's awesome.
Just enjoying it much.
And you meet with a lot of people just one-offs, don't you, as far as new people? I'm always running to people and say, I met with Jim today for breakfast.
Yeah, I really enjoy it. There are 4 or 5 guys that I meet with periodically, not every week. Excuse me. And it's not planned as such as far as what we talk about. We just talk about where we are in our walk with God, what's going on, how can I pray for you, how can you pray for me? And this time of fellowship with guys, I love doing that.
You know, I love the advice you gave, and you wrote a lot of this stuff down for me, which I'm going to, at some point, put in a book, and I'll steal all the credit for it. Just want to give you a heads up on that. But the reality is, you said, involving people in your lives. Going for a walk, taking somebody with you as far as that goes. And one of the things you talked a lot about is keeping physically fit. Mm-hmm. And what's the connection between physically fitness and just keeping yourself active and then the spiritual piece? How does that help you mentally and spiritually?
I have been active all my life. I've done a lot of backpacking and hiking and outdoor stuff and outdoor things. And I think that my spirit affects my body a whole lot. And I exercise 5 days a week, 3 to 5 days a week. And I use the treadmill and elliptical and some weights and just to keep my body toned up, try to lose a little weight and to get rid of Dunlap. And try to keep physically fit, because it really induces a calmness in my spirit to want to be more like Jesus too. But that's what exercise does for me. Also, eating properly. I've gotten off somewhat off sweets, off chocolates, but I was a chocoholic, boy. I tell you what. But I try to be very careful about what I eat. More so, drives the wife crazy. So that my physical body definitely affects my spirit, and my spiritual life, and my spirit, the Holy Spirit, affects my body too.
You know, I love that. One of the things I love meeting you. I love your sense of humor. You validate me. We enjoy each other a lot as far as your sense of humor. Have you ever heard that joke as far as Dunlap disease, your belly Dunlap over your belt? And, you know, I love that. You also, the other thing you validate me, you said one of the things that helps you is whistle while you work. And I've actually found sometimes that whistling causes barriers, more barriers than does actually bring those bonds together. But what are some things that you could advise the second half, those in the second half to do to connect up with those in the first half? What are some things that could help that connection?
Stay young.
Okay.
Think young. Know your limitations, but don't be limited by your limitations. If you want to get out and walk, you want to get out and exercise, know where you are and work up, but don't start out 20 miles in the first day. Work your way up to it. So exercise, thinking, young, being with other people, younger guys, younger gals, and just trying to be spiritually fit.
You know, I love how you continue filling your mind with new things. And when we talked about, I remember when we weren't meeting as a church and you were watching us online, you were watching multiple podcasts, multiple sermons on a given Sunday, filling your mind up all the time with things. It's rare to talk to you about something that's happening in the world, whether spiritually or news-wise, that you don't already know about. I've been thinking through that.
Well, I love to read. Anybody that knows me knows that I carry a book with me wherever I go. If I've got 5 minutes to read something, then I've got 5 minutes to read something. I carry it to the doctor's office. My wife wants to go shopping. I'll sit in the car and read while she does her lady thing. And I really enjoy, especially God's Word. I really am excited and enthused about God's Word and reading it, understanding who God is, understanding His heart, because that's what I want to know is His heart. And I want Him to know my heart, and He does, much better than I know it.
Wow. Well, that's some serious wisdom there. If somebody's taking notes, tremendous stuff. Definitely watch this thing again. I have some real nuggets there. You know, I wanted you to close this in a second here, but I want to share with everyone just talking a little bit about Paul, the Apostle Paul, and his letter of 2 Timothy. And 2 Timothy is the last letter that Paul wrote in the New Testament. He's in prison in Rome, and he knows his death is near. In fact, history tells us he was beheaded. So he's in prison, and he's writing a letter to Timothy, his second letter to him, which was 2 Timothy. And he's writing this letter, and he's talking about the fact that just encouraging the next generation, Timothy is going to be taking over the ministry for him. And when it says Timothy, it's a person, but there's also a group of people in the next generation. And this is what he tells them. This is what he says. He says, I solemnly urge you in the presence of God and Christ Jesus, who will someday judge the living and the dead when he comes and sets up his kingdom. Preach the word of God. Be prepared, whether the time is favorable or not. Patiently correct, rebuke, and encourage your people with good teaching. Now, I love that. He's about to reach the end of his life. He's passing something on to the next generations, to that first half. And then he ends the next section. He talks about kind of his final words. This is how he's going to end the chapter. This is his final words about himself. He says, as for me, my life has already been poured out as an offering to God. The time of my death is near. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. And I have remained faithful. And now the prize that awaits me, the crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous judge, will give me on the day of his return. And that's something I would love to have that as a placard on my tombstone. I bet you'd love to have that as a placard on your tombstone. To just say, this is my life. And you'd think the book would end right there in his final words. But it doesn't. In my Bible, it goes on to basically say his final greetings. And he has this final closing chapter where he names some of the people that are going to be leading the church after he leaves. And what's amazing when you read this, he's not just talking to people, but he's telling us where they are. And it helps you understand the impact you can have. And that's something that's amazing as we talk, how much impact you can have. You don't even know about it. The person you're talking to, you have no idea where they're going to be someday. And the seeds they're planting. But this is what he says. I love this. He says, Luke is with him in Rome, and he wants Timothy and Mark to join him there. Now, this is Rome in about 68 AD. Bad things are happening to Christians in Rome at that point, but he wants to invite Christians in because he knows that Rome is the center of that first century world. He can get people there running after Jesus, what a difference they can make. Then he says Crescens is in Galatia. That's where the book of Galatians is written to. He says Titus is in Dalmatia, which is across the Adriatic Sea from Rome. He says Tychicus is in Ephesus, the book of Ephesians. He says Priscilla, Aquila, Onesiphorus, and Erastus are all in Corinth. And if you know your first century, Corinth, That's where the 1st and 2nd Corinthians are written to. It's a very geographically strategic place by virtue of a canal it's got. And so it's really important that day, and a lot of people pass through that port city. And then it says, I've written these things out phonetically, and I still can't say it. Trophimus is in Miletus, which is south of Ephesus. Long story short, these people are all over the Mediterranean area. And I think it's just a great summary of what I've been talking about today, that we have an opportunity in our first half to impact the world, an opportunity to change the world. And it's a tremendous opportunity. But we have even a greater opportunity. We can partner with what we're doing in our lives. We can partner with other people to really pass it on. And the impact we can have is huge, absolutely huge. What do you think about when you talk with younger people in that first half? What do you think about when it comes to encourage them? What do you see in people?
What it's going to be like as you get older. Don't wait till you get to be 85 years old. Start early. Get to know God. Get to know God's heart. You talked about the two groups, first half and the second half, and you asked about how do you mingle? How do you get the two together? And that's one generation here and generation over here. And I think Hope Church is doing that. Small groups. Our son Christopher was in a small group several years ago with he was 45 at the time, I guess it was, and then one of the guys in there was 90 years old, about there. So here's a 45 and a 90-year-old, and the small groups are a great place to do that. And our group, that on Saturday we meet, and we have various ages too. Yeah. So I think meeting with other people and conversing with them and say, how are you doing? What's going on? Hey, how can I pray for you? Just connecting those two halves of lives and not being afraid to speak to someone because they're younger or because they're older.
I hope Jim has just validated for everybody that every generation is needed. Every person, every minute of the game matters, because we never understand the seeds we're planting and what's going to happen with those seeds. And the key is, how do we work together? How do we get us working together so we can accomplish all God has for our church, but more importantly, for his kingdom? We're here for this earth for kingdom work. I hope your 2-minute drill lasts a lot longer. Many more years.
I've only got 2 minutes.
It's a long 2 minutes. It's a long
good,
2 minutes.
Well, in another 85 years, I'll be there, won't I?
Exactly right. Exactly right. Hey, Jim, why don't you stand up? Will you close us in prayer today? Close us out.
I did. Father God, thank you for your love for us. We, all of us, in some way or another, want to know you. And some are just starting. Some haven't started yet. And somewhere along the line, we get at the place where you've been chasing us all of our lives, and finally we turn around and chase you. God, I want to be a God chaser. I want to be a God knower. I want to know your heart and what you want in life for me and what you want in life for my family and those that I come in contact with every day. God, bless Hope Church and bless the other churches that are ministering for you. Be with us today and just continue to guide us. Make us hungry for you, God, because I am and because I want others to be. To impart to others the excitement that I have about you and knowing your heart. Thank you in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Let's give a round of applause for Jim. Thank you, Jim.
However or wherever you're watching or listening, thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Alex, and I'm the online pastor here at Hope Church. And here at Hope, we want to do whatever it takes for all people to follow, grow, and live for Jesus. And so our prayer for you here today is that you would not only feel encouraged and inspired through today's message, but that we could also help you take your next step towards Jesus today. So if today you're feeling empowered to take your next step, I want to invite you to do one of two things. The first is to go to our website, hopechurchnc.com, and go to the Next Steps tab to sign up for Next Steps. This is a great way, whether you're in person or online, to get connected to Hope Church. And secondly, if you have a specific prayer request, a praise, or a question, you can email me at alex@hopefornc.com. I'd love to personally connect with you. And as always, if you would say that Hope Church is making an impact in your life and encouraging you in your relationship with Jesus, then I'd like to invite you to support this ministry through generosity. Week after week, we're seeing lives change because of Jesus. So we would be honored for you to partner with us as we continue to do whatever it takes for all people to follow, grow, and to live for Jesus. You can also download the Hope Church app in the App Store or Google Play Store for more resources and to stay up to date with everything that's going on here at Hope Church. We want to do anything that we can and everything that we can to help and resource you in your relationship with Jesus. Again, thank you so much for watching or listening. We hope to hear from you soon.